Why was the dish that made the entire festival turn their heads treated as if it didn't even exist? And why did the judge known as the Golden Nose flee after just one whiff of its aroma? The Golden Palate. Awards shimmer under Manhattan's autumn sky, transforming Bryant Park into a cathedral of culinary ambition. Spotlight beams slice through the evening air like theatrical swords, illuminating rows of pristine food stalls where the city's most celebrated chefs showcase their innovations. The air thrums with anticipation. Camera flashes pop like fireflies against the darkening sky, and the complex symphony of sizzling pans, chopping knives, and murmured critiques creates an almost religious atmosphere. Steam rises from dozens of cooking stations, carrying the intoxicating blend of seared meats, exotic spices, and caramelizing vegetables. The crowd moves in carefully choreographed patterns, food enthusiasts clutching their phones like prayer books, documenting every moment for their social media congregations. This isn't just another food festival. This is where culinary destinies are forged in the crucible of public judgment. The winner of tonight's Best Street Food Innovation will grace the cover of Food and Wine magazine, securing fame that transforms food truck operators into restaurant empires overnight. The stakes are measured not just in dollars, but in dreams. Careers that have taken decades to build can be elevated to stardom or condemned to bankruptcy based on a single evening's performance. The judges move through the crowd like modern-day oracles, their words carrying the weight of prophecy. Marcus Thompson stands behind his modest stainless steel cart, methodically arranging ingredients with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a life-saving operation. At 45, his weathered hands tell the story of two distinct lives, one spent building a $50 million tech empire from nothing, the other honoring a grandmother's legacy through food that carries the weight of 4 generations of love and sacrifice. His flannel shirt, soft from countless washings, and worn leather apron disguise the fact that he commands more wealth than most of the celebrity chefs surrounding him. The contrast is deliberate. Marcus learned long ago that true power doesn't need to announce itself through expensive clothes or flashy equipment. His cart may look humble, but every element has been carefully chosen for functionality and efficiency. 2 months ago, Marcus walked away from his corner office overlooking Silicon Valley, leaving behind board meetings and venture capital presentations to pursue something that called to his soul. The decision came as he held his grandmother's hand in her final moments, promising to share her recipes with the world. Grandma Essie had spent 60 years cooking for wealthy white families in New Orleans, her genius confined to their private dining rooms, her innovations never credited, her story never told to anyone who mattered. "Promise me, baby," she had whispered, her voice barely audible above the hospital machines. "Promise me you'll show them what real cooking looks like, not fancy French words or molecular whatever, just good food made with love and knowledge passed down through blood and tears." Now Marcus carries her legacy in a collection of handwritten recipes, their pages yellowed with age and stained with decades of patient teaching. Each recipe card tells a story, not just of ingredients and techniques, but of a woman who elevated simple ingredients into transcendent experiences while remaining invisible to the very people who benefited from her genius. Tonight's signature dish represents the culmination of Marcus's journey from technology to tradition. The ghost pepper, mac and cheese with 48-hour braised oxtail follows Grandma Essie's original foundation, a mac and cheese so perfect that wealthy New Orleans families would request it for their most important dinner parties. But Marcus has elevated it with techniques learned from years of eating at Michelin-starred restaurants and hosting private dinners for tech moguls who paid thousands for the privilege of tasting his creations. The irony isn't lost on him. As CEO of 3 successful startups, Marcus commanded rooms full of venture capitalists and board members, negotiating deals worth hundreds of millions. He's spoken at conferences watched by millions, built companies that changed how people interact with technology, and accumulated wealth that most people can only dream of achieving. Yet here, in this world of whisks and sauces, he's invisible. judged not by his accomplishments or capabilities, but by assumptions based on his appearance and the humble nature of his presentation. Marcus observes everything with the analytical mind that made him successful in tech. He notices how the judges move through the festival, their patterns, their preferences, their unconscious prejudices. He watches Isabella Rossini, the self-proclaimed queenie of food criticism, and her entourage sweep past Asian fusion stalls operated by talented chefs to linger at molecular gastronomy displays run by young white chefs with pristine credentials and European training. His phone buzzes constantly with messages from former colleagues and current business partners. The tech world still demands his attention, board meetings via video call, investor updates requiring his signature, strategic decisions that affect thousands of employees across 3 companies. Marcus has learned to compartmentalize these demands. Tonight, he's not a CEO managing multi-million-dollar enterprises. He's Grandma Essie's grandson, armed with her wooden spoon and her unshakable belief that food is love made tangible. The wooden spoon itself tells a story. Carved from Louisiana cypress by his great-grandfather nearly a century ago, it bears the gentle indentations left by decades of stirring, the smooth patina created by countless hands. Marcus keeps it wrapped in one of Grandma Essie's kitchen towels, treating it with the reverence others reserve for family heirlooms. Because that's exactly what it is, a physical connection to generations of knowledge and sacrifice. Isabella Rossini commands the golden palatine, her battlefield, every movement calculated to project authority and exclusivity. As the chief food critic for Gourmet Elite magazine, her reviews can transform unknown chefs into culinary superstars or reduce established restaurateurs to bankruptcy within weeks. At 52, she moves through the festival with the calculated grace of someone who knows her words carry the weight of career-ending consequences. Her platinum blonde hair is pulled into a severe chignon that hasn't moved despite the evening breeze, and her black Chanel suit costs more than most food truck operators earn in 3 months. Isabella clutches her signature leather-bound notebook, a Hermes creation that she claims once belonged to Julia Child, though no one has ever verified this story. She records observations in precise handwriting that has condemned dozens of culinary dreams to failure, her Mont Blanc pen moving across pages like a judge's gavel delivering verdicts. "James, darling," she calls to her photographer without looking at him. "Make sure you capture the proper angles of Chef Baptiste's molecular spherification. His technique has improved considerably since last season." Her voice carries the cultivated authority of someone who has convinced herself that her preferences represent objective truth rather than personal opinion. James Wellington, her constant companion, serves as both photographer and intelligence gatherer. His role extends far beyond capturing images of dishes. He's Isabella's network within the industry, collecting gossip about chefs' personal lives, financial struggles, and professional vulnerabilities. James knows which restaurants are behind on rent, which marriages are failing under the pressure of restaurant ownership, which partnerships are dissolving due to ego conflicts. This information becomes leverage in Isabella's carefully manicured hands. "Did you know?" James whispers conspiratorially as they approach another high-end display, "that Marcus Chen from Jade Dynasty is actually 3 months behind on his lease? His landlord is threatening eviction." Isabella files this information away, knowing it might prove useful in future negotiations or reviews. A struggling chef is a compliant chef, more likely to cater to her preferences in hopes of earning a positive review. Tonight, Isabella approaches the Golden Palatine Awards with particular intensity bordering on desperation. Food and Wine magazine has hired a younger, more diverse editorial team, potentially threatening Gourmet Elite's market dominance. Social media influencers with millions of followers are bypassing traditional food critics entirely, building direct relationships with audiences hungry for authentic experiences rather than manufactured expertise. Isabella needs to demonstrate her continued relevance by discovering and crowning the evening's winner, cementing her position as the industry's ultimate kingmaker. She's convinced herself that her decades of experience give her insights that younger critics and social media personalities cannot match, ignoring the growing evidence that her influence is waning among audiences who value authenticity over authority. Her third key ally is Richard "The Nose" Patterson, the evening's head judge whose reputation supposedly rests on superhuman olfactory abilities. Richard claims he can identify ingredients down to their geographic origins, distinguish between free-range and conventional eggs by scent alone, and detect the emotional state of chefs through the aromas of their cooking. His theatrical judging style, complete with ritualistic hand-washing ceremonies and silver chopsticks imported from Japan, has made him a minor celebrity in food television. "Isabella, my dear." Richard approaches with his characteristic flourish, producing a silk handkerchief to dab at his nose. "I detect notes of disappointment in the air tonight. Several of these displays lack the passion necessary for true culinary artistry." His performance masks a secret that would destroy his career if revealed. Years of excessive drinking have significantly compromised his sense of taste and smell, leaving him dependent on visual cues and others' reactions to maintain his reputation. The trio operates with the efficiency of seasoned politicians running a well-oiled campaign machine. Isabella identifies targets based on her vision of culinary excellence. James gathers intelligence and creates compelling narratives, and Richard provides the official credibility their decisions require. They've perfected the art of elevating chefs who fit their narrow criteria, typically young, photogenic, trained at prestigious European institutions, and capable of articulating their culinary philosophy in terms that make affluent white audiences comfortable. Their prejudices aren't explicitly stated, but reveal themselves through consistent patterns that anyone paying attention would notice. They gravitate toward chefs with European training, dismiss comfort food as unsophisticated, regardless of its technical execution, and show particular disdain for cuisines they consider ethnic, unless presented by chefs who can explain cultural significance in academic terms rather than personal experience. "Look at this beautiful plating from Chef Rodriguez." Isabella gestures toward an elaborate display of deconstructed tacos, presented by a young chef who attended culinary school in France. Now, this represents proper evolution of traditional techniques, intellectual refinement, rather than mere nostalgia. The underlying message is clear. Authenticity must be filtered through approved educational channels to be considered legitimate. Isabella particularly resents the democratization of food media brought about by social platforms. Food bloggers and Instagram influencers threaten her gatekeeping role by connecting directly with audiences, bypassing the traditional hierarchy she represents. She views the Golden Palette Awards as an opportunity to reassert traditional authority structures, to remind the culinary world that expertise and institutional credentials matter more than viral videos or follower counts. These social media personalities don't understand the complexity of true culinary evaluation, she explains to James as they observe a young blogger interviewing chefs with obvious enthusiasm and genuine curiosity. They mistake popularity for quality, emotion for analysis. The public needs guidance from those of us with proper training and experience. The confrontation begins with a scent that stops Richard Patterson mid-sentence during his elaborate discourse on the philosophical implications of umami. Walking past Marcus Thompson's modest cart, while gesturing grandly about the spiritual connection between chef and diner, the head judge's famous nose detects something extraordinary. The deep, complex aroma of oxtail that has surrendered its essence over 48 hours of patient braising, layered with the sharp heat of ghost peppers and the comforting richness of aged Vermont cheddar. For a moment, Richard's theatrical persona drops completely. His nostrils flare involuntarily, his eyes widen with genuine surprise, and he takes an unconscious step toward Marcus's cart. The aroma speaks to something primal in his damaged senses, powerful enough to penetrate the alcohol-induced numbness that has plagued him for years. "My God," he mutters under his breath, "what is that incredible?" But then he sees Marcus, a middle-aged black man in flannel and an apron, methodically plating his creation with calloused hands that speak of real work rather than culinary school precision. And Richard's expression hardens like concrete setting in winter. The transformation is visible and ugly. Richard's face shifts from wonder to dismissal in the space of a heartbeat, his trained prejudices overriding his sensory response. He fakes a sudden coughing fit, raising his silk handkerchief to his mouth with exaggerated distress. "Excuse me," he announces loudly enough for nearby attendees to hear, his voice carrying theatrical concern. "I'm terribly sorry, but I seem to be having an allergic reaction to some of the stronger seasonings in the air. Perhaps something overly aggressive with the spice blend." His eyes dart toward Marcus's cart with obvious implication before he hurries away, leaving Marcus to watch his retreating form with quiet understanding. The slight doesn't go unnoticed by Emma Rodriguez, a 24-year-old food blogger whose YouTube channel, Real Flavors, has attracted 500,000 subscribers through her genuine enthusiasm and unpretentious approach to food discovery. Emma built her following by seeking out authentic experiences rather than chasing trends, and something about Marcus's focused preparation catches her attention. "This smells absolutely incredible," she says, approaching the cart with her phone already recording, her voice carrying genuine excitement over the ambient noise of the festival. "I'm Emma Rodriguez from Real Flavors, and I have to know, what am I smelling that's making my mouth water from 20 feet away?" Marcus looks up from his careful plating, his face lighting up with the quiet pride of someone sharing something deeply personal. "This is my grandmother's mac and cheese recipe, but I've added 48-hour braised oxtail and ghost pepper oil that I make from peppers grown in Louisiana soil. The cheese blend includes aged Vermont cheddar, Wisconsin Gruyere, and a touch of Parmigiano Reggiano, aged 36 months. Emma's eyes widen with recognition. This isn't just comfort food elevated, it's a masterclass in technique disguised as simple cooking. "Can you tell me about your grandmother's influence?" This sounds like there's a story here. "Grandma Essie cooked for wealthy families in New Orleans for 60 years, Marcus explains, his voice carrying reverence and barely contained emotion. She never got credit for her innovations, never had her name on a menu, but she could take the simplest ingredients and make them sing. This recipe, it's her foundation with techniques I've learned over 20 years of cooking for people who appreciate real food." Emma is about to take her first bite, her viewers already commenting excitedly on the live stream, when Isabella Rossini materializes beside them like a storm cloud blocking the sun. Her appearance is so sudden and commanding that nearby conversations pause, people instinctively stepping back to make room for her obvious authority. "Emma, darling." Isabella's voice carries the saccharine sweetness of artificial concern mixed with unmistakable condescension. "I need to have a word with you." Her smile doesn't reach her eyes as she places a perfectly manicured hand on the young blogger's arm, guiding her away from Marcus's cart with practiced manipulation. "What's wrong?" Emma asks, confusion evident in her voice as she looks back at Marcus, who continues plating with studied calm despite the obvious tension. Isabella's voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper, but her words carry clearly to Marcus and the growing crowd around his cart. "This is a professional event with very specific insurance and liability requirements, sweetheart. I'm not entirely certain this particular vendor has completed all the necessary documentation for an event of this caliber." Emma's confusion deepens. "But everyone here was pre-approved by the event organizers. I checked the vendor list myself." "Well, yes," Isabella continues, her tone suggesting she's sharing insider knowledge with someone too naive to understand the complexities involved. "But there are levels of approval, darling. Some of these smaller operations sometimes cut corners. Food safety protocols, proper insurance coverage, health department certifications. It's quite complex." The implication hangs in the air like smoke from a grease fire. Emma hesitates, her phone still recording, uncertainty replacing her earlier enthusiasm. She looks back at Marcus, then at Isabella's expectant face, caught between her instincts and the pressure from someone whose opinion could significantly influence her career trajectory. James Wellington appears as if summoned by some invisible signal, his camera capturing Emma's moment of indecision from multiple angles. "Isabella's absolutely right to be concerned," he adds, his voice carrying the authority of insider knowledge and years of festival experience. We've seen issues with food safety at these smaller vendors before. Just last month, there was an incident at the Brooklyn Food Fair. Nothing made the mainstream papers, of course, but those of us in the industry know to be cautious about certain situations. The lie comes so smoothly, delivered with such practiced confidence, that even Emma begins to doubt her instincts. The fabricated story sounds plausible enough to create uncertainty, and the suggestion that she lacks insider knowledge makes her feel foolish for not being aware of these supposed risks. I don't want to cause any problems, Emma says hesitantly, apologizing to Marcus with obvious reluctance. Maybe I'll come back later if there's time. Isabella's smile becomes more genuine as she senses victory. That's very wise, dear. Now, let me show you something truly spectacular. Jean-Baptiste from Le Bernardin is doing his famous molecular spherification technique. His training at the French Culinary Institute really shows in his technical precision. Marcus watches them go, his expression unchanged, but his mind already working through the implications of what he's witnessed. This isn't just personal discrimination, it's systematic exclusion disguised as professional standards, wrapped in the language of safety and expertise to make it seem legitimate and necessary. What Marcus observes in that moment represents something larger and more insidious than simple prejudice. This is gatekeeping in its purest form, the use of manufactured authority and fabricated concerns to control access and opportunity. The system operates through plausible deniability, making it nearly impossible to challenge directly without appearing paranoid or unreasonable. Using his Apple Watch, Marcus discreetly records the entire exchange, years of corporate negotiations having taught him to document everything carefully. His tech background makes him instinctively suspicious of claims that can't be verified, and his experience with due diligence processes tells him that Isabella's concerns are likely fabricated. As soon as Isabella's group moves away, Marcus pulls out his phone and calls his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to verify something immediately," he says quietly, stepping away from his cart to avoid being overheard. "The Golden Palette Awards. I need you to check our insurance coverage, permits, and any recent incidents involving food safety at similar events. Also, see if you can find any record of problems at the Brooklyn Food Fair last month." The response comes within minutes, delivered with the efficiency that characterizes all of Marcus's business operations. Their documentation is not just complete but exemplary. Their insurance coverage exceeds industry standards, and no incidents have been reported at any New York food festivals in the past 6 months. The Brooklyn Food Fair story is entirely fabricated. Marcus understands that he's witnessing something larger than personal slight. This is institutionalized gatekeeping, the kind of systematic exclusion that uses professional credibility to mask personal prejudice. In the tech world, he's dismantled similar power structures through innovation, strategic thinking, and careful documentation. Tonight, he'll need to apply those same skills to a very different battlefield. Marcus Thompson doesn't react with anger or confrontation. Instead, he responds with something far more devastating: pure culinary brilliance combined with strategic precision. As Isabella's group disappears into the crowd, Marcus makes a decision that will demonstrate exactly why Michelin stars are earned, not awarded through networking or social politics. He pulls out his phone and opens the Notes app, revealing something that would shock Isabella if she knew. Detailed molecular breakdowns of his ghost pepper mac and cheese recipe, complete with precise temperature curves, pH measurements, and protein denaturation timelines. This isn't just comfort food. It's a masterclass in food science disguised as grandma's cooking. "Listen carefully," Marcus says quietly into his phone, calling someone whose identity he keeps hidden. "I need you to analyze the flavor compounds I'm about to describe. Ghost pepper capsaicin at exactly 1.2 million Scoville units, integrated through a controlled emulsification process that creates sustained heat release over precisely 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The oxtail collagen has been converted to gelatin through 48 hours at exactly 147 degrees Fahrenheit, not a degree higher or lower. The person on the other end of the call is Dr. Sarah Kim, molecular gastronomist and former head of research at the French Laundry, now working as a consultant for Michelin's technical evaluation team. Marcus worked with her 2 years ago when he was developing his private dinner menus, and she's never forgotten the precision of his approach to flavor development. "Marcus," Sarah's voice carries immediate recognition and excitement. "Are you describing the oxtail mac dish you served at that incredible dinner party? I've been trying to reverse engineer that flavor profile for months. The way you managed to maintain the ghost pepper's heat while preventing it from overwhelming the dairy proteins was revolutionary." "I'm at the Golden Palate Hour," Marcus replies, watching the crowd gather around his cart with growing intensity. "There's been some interesting discussion about culinary standards and professional credentials. I thought you might want to observe how traditional techniques can achieve molecular gastronomy results without the theatrical presentation." Sarah's response is immediate. "I'm sending Chef Laurent immediately. He's been looking for exactly this kind of innovation for the new street food category we're developing. Marcus, if this is what I think it is, you're about to change how we evaluate technical excellence in casual dining formats." Marcus's second move reveals his deep understanding of food science and flavor chemistry. While serving customers, he explains his technique with the precision of a laboratory researcher. The key is understanding that capsaicin molecules bind differently at various temperatures. By introducing the ghost pepper oil at exactly 160 degrees during the cheese sauce preparation, I create sustained release that builds gradually rather than attacking immediately. A young culinary student in the crowd starts taking notes frantically. "But how do you prevent the dairy proteins from curdling under that heat stress?" Marcus's answer demonstrates knowledge that most formally trained chefs never acquire. Sodium citrate acts as an emulsifying salt, maintaining protein structure while allowing the capsaicin integration. The pH balance has to remain between 5.8 and 6.2 throughout the process, or the entire sauce structure collapses. The conversation draws attention from several professional chefs in the crowd, who recognize that Marcus is discussing techniques typically associated with high-end molecular gastronomy restaurants. His ability to achieve these results in a food truck setting using equipment that costs a fraction of professional kitchen setups demonstrates mastery that goes far beyond traditional training. Within 20 minutes, Chef Laurent Dubois arrives. Not just any Michelin representative, but the organization's leading expert on technical innovation and the architect of their new evaluation criteria for street food excellence. His presence at the festival isn't coincidental. Sarah Kim called him directly after her conversation with Marcus. "Monsieur Thompson," Laurent approaches with the formal respect that Michelin evaluators reserve for chefs they consider peers. "Dr. Kim tells me you are achieving remarkable flavor complexity through traditional methods enhanced by scientific precision. May I observe your technique?" Marcus nods, continuing his preparation while explaining each step with the confidence of someone who understands his craft at the molecular level. The 48-hour braising process breaks down collagen into gelatin while concentrating flavor compounds through controlled evaporation. The oxtail releases glutamates that enhance umami perception, creating depth that most people associate with expensive aged ingredients. Laurent watches intently as Marcus demonstrates his cheese sauce technique, noting the precise timing and temperature control that produces restaurant-quality results using street vendor equipment. "This level of technical control suggests formal training in food science," Laurent observes. "Self-taught," Marcus replies calmly. "But I spent 3 years studying flavor chemistry and protein behavior because I wanted to understand why my grandmother's recipes work so well. Turns out she was using advanced techniques without knowing the scientific explanations." Laurent tastes the finished dish, his expression shifting immediately from professional curiosity to genuine amazement. As someone who evaluates Michelin-starred cuisine daily, he recognizes exceptional technique regardless of its presentation. This demonstrates mastery of heat management, protein chemistry, and flavor development that rivals any 3-star establishment I have evaluated. The crowd watches this exchange with growing excitement, recognizing that something significant is happening. Laurent's presence and obvious respect for Marcus's technique contradicts everything Isabella implied about credentials and professional standards. I believe, Laurent says carefully, pulling out his phone, that this represents exactly the kind of innovation we seek to recognize in our expanded evaluation criteria. Would you be willing to participate in a formal technical assessment for our new street food recognition program? Marcus's response carries quiet satisfaction. I'd be honored. But I should mention, the techniques I'm using tonight represent just one dish from a collection of family recipes that I've enhanced through scientific understanding. Each one demonstrates how traditional knowledge, properly understood, can achieve results that modern molecular gastronomy attempts to replicate through expensive equipment and complex procedures. The revelation that Marcus possesses an entire collection of scientifically enhanced traditional recipes, combined with Laurent's obvious enthusiasm for his work, creates a buzz that spreads rapidly through the festival's professional networks. This isn't just about one impressive dish. It's about a fundamental reimagining of how culinary excellence can be achieved and recognized. The festival's carefully orchestrated atmosphere shifts dramatically as word spreads about the extraordinary food being served at Booth K7. Social media amplifies the discovery, with posts and videos creating a feedback loop that draws more visitors, generates more content, and builds momentum that traditional marketing could never achieve. Richard Patterson finds himself in an impossible position. Ignore the growing crowd and risk appearing completely out of touch with popular opinion, or investigate and potentially validate someone he dismissed with theatrical disdain just an hour earlier. His reputation as the nose demands that he respond to what hundreds of people are praising, even if acknowledging the food's quality contradicts his earlier judgment. The irony isn't lost on festival attendees who witnessed his dismissive performance earlier. Many of them have been recording everything on their phones, creating a documented timeline of events that will prove difficult to ignore or rationalize. Richard approaches Marcus's cart with his characteristic elaborate ceremony, but there's a desperate quality to his performance now. He produces his ritualistic wet wipes, cleaning his hands with theatrical precision while the crowd watches with a mixture of anticipation and barely concealed skepticism. Several people recognize him from his dismissive earlier behavior, and their expressions suggest they're more interested in seeing whether he'll acknowledge his mistake than in witnessing his famous judging routine. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard announces, his voice carrying forced authority, "I always make it a point to evaluate every offering at these prestigious events with the same rigorous standards." He produces his signature silver chopsticks, examining Marcus's ghost pepper mac and cheese with the kind of theatrical intensity usually reserved for Michelin-starred presentations. But when Richard takes his first bite, the performance stops entirely. The flavors hit him in waves. First, the familiar comfort of perfectly prepared mac and cheese, then the complex heat of ghost peppers that builds gradually rather than overwhelming the palate. Finally, the rich depth of oxtail that has surrendered its essence through days of patient braising. Despite his compromised palate, damaged by years of excessive drinking, Richard cannot deny what he's experiencing. The crowd watches in fascination as Richard's expression shifts from theatrical authority to genuine surprise, then to something approaching awe. His carefully maintained persona cracks as he realizes he's tasting something exceptional, food that challenges his assumptions and exceeds his experience. "This is," Richard starts, then stops, clearly struggling with the implications of his admission. The crowd leans in, phones capturing every moment of his internal conflict. "This is extraordinary. The technique required for this level of flavor development? Where did you train?" Marcus's response carries quiet dignity and understated power. "I'm self-taught, following recipes passed down through 4 generations of my family. Same way my grandmother learned when she cooked for wealthy families in New Orleans for 60 years without ever receiving credit for her innovations." The crowd captures every moment on their phones, but more importantly, several people begin sharing the footage immediately. Emma Rodriguez, the young blogger who was earlier discouraged from trying Marcus's food, now films the entire exchange with obvious satisfaction. Her earlier footage of Isabella's warnings, combined with Richard's obvious surprise and grudging admiration, creates a narrative that writes itself. The story of prejudice exposed and excellence vindicated. The oxtail preparation alone must have taken days, Richard continues, his professional curiosity overriding his embarrassment. And the ghost pepper integration is masterful, providing heat without overwhelming the other flavors. This represents sophisticated technique disguised as comfort food. Isabella arrives just as Richard is delivering what amounts to a glowing review, his earlier dismissal forgotten in his enthusiasm for what he's experiencing. She sees the crowd, the cameras, the obvious excitement, and realizes immediately that her strategy has backfired spectacularly. Instead of controlling the evening's narrative, she's created a story that highlights her own prejudices and demonstrates her poor judgment. "Excuse me," Isabella interjects, trying to reassert control over a situation that has clearly escaped her influence. "I'm Isabella Rossini from Gourmet Elite magazine. I'd like to try this dish that's generating such remarkable enthusiasm." The irony isn't lost on anyone present, and several people in the crowd exchange knowing glances. Multiple phones capture her request, and the contrast with her earlier dismissal becomes immediately apparent to anyone following the evening's events. Marcus responds with professional courtesy that makes her earlier behavior appear even more petty by comparison. "Of course," Marcus says simply, preparing a fresh portion with the same care he's shown every customer. "I hope you enjoy it." As Isabella tastes the dish, her expression reveals the same surprise that Richard experienced moments earlier. She's spent decades critiquing food at the highest levels, and she recognizes exceptional technique when she encounters it. But she's also trapped by her earlier statements and behavior, unable to fully embrace what she's experiencing without admitting her mistakes publicly. The situation becomes even more complicated when Chef Antoine Dubois, Director of Operations for Michelin Guide International, appears unexpectedly at the festival. Antoine recognizes Marcus immediately from across the crowd. They met 3 years ago at a private pop-up dinner that left a lasting impression on the Michelin executive. "Marcus Thompson!" Antoine calls out, his French accent adding authority to his obvious enthusiasm. "I had no idea you were participating tonight. When did you start operating a food truck? This is even better than your incredible pop-up dinners." The revelation that Marcus isn't just another food truck operator, but someone personally known to Michelin leadership, creates immediate ripple effects throughout the crowd. Food industry professionals begin recalculating their assumptions, and Isabella's face visibly pales as she realizes the magnitude of her error. Emma Rodriguez, now live streaming to her 500,000 followers, captures Antoine's enthusiastic recognition. The hashtag #Michelin Street Food begins trending as viewers share the unexpected discovery of exceptional cuisine in an unlikely setting, operated by someone who clearly has connections and credibility that Isabella completely misjudged. "Chef Dubois," Marcus responds with genuine warmth. "It's wonderful to see you again. I decided to honor my grandmother's legacy by sharing her recipes with people who appreciate authentic flavors, regardless of the setting or presentation." The contrast between Marcus's gracious dignity and Isabella's obvious discomfort becomes the evening's defining image. She's forced to witness the celebration of someone she dismissed, unable to claim credit for discovering him or distance herself from her earlier statements without appearing hypocritical and petty. Richard Patterson attempts to salvage his reputation by offering increasingly effusive praise for Marcus's technique, but his earlier dismissal has been captured on multiple videos that are already circulating on social media. The contradiction between his stated expertise and his initial judgment becomes a viral sensation, undermining the credibility he's spent years building through theatrical performances. The immediate aftermath of Marcus Thompson's triumph extends far beyond a single evening's victory, rippling through the food industry like shock waves from an earthquake. The viral videos from the Golden Palate Awards spark a broader conversation about gatekeeping, bias, and authenticity in culinary criticism, forcing institutions to confront uncomfortable truths about exclusion disguised as professional standards. Food and Wine magazine, facing intense pressure from readers who witnessed the evening's events through social media, announces a comprehensive review of their award selection processes within 48 hours. The editor-in-chief, Sarah Chen, who happens to be Marcus's former Stanford MBA classmate, recognizes both an opportunity to modernize their approach and the necessity of distancing the publication from Isabella's controversial behavior. "We're implementing anonymous judging rounds for all future competitions," Sarah announces in a carefully worded statement that acknowledges the problems without explicitly condemning Isabella. Excellence in cuisine transcends background, training, or presentation style. Our responsibility is to recognize exceptional food wherever we find it, evaluated purely on merit rather than preconceptions. The Golden Palate. Awards organization faces even more immediate pressure as videos showing Isabella's discriminatory behavior and Richard's obvious bias generate tens of thousands of negative comments across multiple platforms. Event organizers, watching their reputation suffer in real time, quickly announce significant changes to their judging criteria and selection processes. "We're implementing a 2-round system," the festival director explains in an emergency press conference. Dishes will be evaluated anonymously in the first round, with judges unaware of the chef's identities, backgrounds, or presentation styles. Only after initial scoring will judges meet the creators. We're also instituting mandatory implicit bias training for all judges and critics participating in our events. Isabella Rossini's position becomes untenable as Gourmet Elite faces subscription cancellations, advertiser concerns, and social media backlash that threatens the magazine's credibility and commercial viability. The publication, desperate to maintain relevance in a rapidly changing media landscape, quietly reassigns her to their European division, effectively ending her influence over American culinary culture and removing her from the positions where her biases can affect careers. Her replacement, Maria Santos, a younger critic known for championing diverse voices and authentic cuisine, signals the publication's attempt to modernize its perspective and reconnect with contemporary audiences who value inclusivity over exclusivity. Richard Patterson's reputation suffers more permanent and visible damage. Food Network cancels his upcoming show after clips of his dismissive behavior toward Marcus contrast sharply with his theatrical praise after tasting the food. His credibility as the nose dissolves when audiences realize his judgments are influenced more by appearance and prejudice than actual sensory ability. "We've decided to move in a different direction," a network spokesperson explains diplomatically, focusing on programming that celebrates authentic culinary excellence regardless of its source or presentation. The systemic changes extend beyond individual consequences into institutional reform. Culinary schools begin incorporating discussions of bias, inclusivity, and cultural sensitivity into their curricula, recognizing that the industry's future depends on embracing diverse perspectives rather than perpetuating traditional hierarchies that exclude valuable voices and experiences. Marcus's story inspires the Hidden Kitchens movement, where successful professionals from various industries share family recipes and cooking techniques through pop-up events, social media platforms, and collaborative dinners. The movement celebrates authentic flavors over formal training, creating space for voices that traditional food media overlooked or actively excluded. The Michelin Guide announces a new category specifically for street food and casual dining, acknowledging that exceptional cuisine exists outside traditional restaurant settings and formal presentations. Antoine Dubois credits Marcus's example as inspiration for recognizing excellence regardless of its packaging or environment. "Great cooking is about technique, flavor, and passion," Antoine explains in an interview with Food and Wine. "These qualities can be found in food trucks, family kitchens, and street stalls just as easily as in Michelin-starred restaurants. Our responsibility is to recognize excellence wherever it exists." Marcus leverages his victory and newfound platform to create lasting change through the Heritage Food Foundation, a non-profit organization that provides scholarships and mentorship for aspiring chefs from underrepresented communities. The foundation partners with culinary schools to ensure that students learn traditional techniques alongside contemporary methods, preserving cultural knowledge while encouraging innovation. 3 months after the Golden Palate Awards, Marcus Thompson stands in his grandmother's kitchen in New Orleans, now transformed into a state-of-the-art test kitchen for the Heritage Food Foundation. The same wooden spoon that Grandma Essie used for 6 decades rests in his hand as he teaches a group of culinary scholarship recipients the techniques that elevated simple ingredients into extraordinary meals that could compete with any restaurant in the world. The kitchen walls display photographs spanning 4 generations. Grandma Essie in her employer's kitchens, never credited for her innovations, but smiling with quiet pride. Marcus's mother, who preserved the recipes while pursuing her own career in education. Marcus himself during his tech CEO days, looking confident but somehow disconnected from his deeper purpose. And now the scholarship recipients who will carry these traditions forward while adding their own innovations and cultural perspectives. His phone rests silently on the counter, no longer demanding constant attention from his former business empire. Marcus has successfully transitioned from technology executive to culinary educator, using the wealth he accumulated in Silicon Valley to create opportunities for others while honoring his family's legacy in ways that extend far beyond personal success. The kitchen window overlooks a small garden where Marcus grows the herbs and vegetables that Grandma Essie taught him to cultivate decades ago. The connection to the earth, to tradition, to authentic flavors, grounds him in ways that boardroom victories and financial achievements never could. He's discovered that success measured in dollars pales compared to success measured in lives changed, traditions preserved, and barriers broken. Remember, he tells his students, holding up a pinch of ghost pepper flakes, it's not about the heat, it's about the complexity. The pepper should enhance the other flavors, not dominate them. Same principle applies to life. Real power doesn't need to shout or dominate. It speaks through competence, patience, and authentic excellence. A local food writer visits to document the foundation's expanding work, but Marcus deflects attention from himself to focus on his students and their achievements. He's learned that the most profound victories don't require public recognition or media attention. They're measured in the confidence of a young chef mastering a difficult technique, in the preservation of family recipes that might otherwise be lost to time, in the gradual shift of an entire industry toward greater inclusivity and authentic representation. Emma Rodriguez arrives to film a documentary about the Foundation's growing impact on culinary education and industry reform. Her career has flourished since the Golden Palette Awards, but she credits Marcus's example with teaching her to look beyond surface appearances, to find authentic stories that resonate with audiences hungry for real experiences rather than manufactured drama. The most important lesson I learned that night, Emma reflects while filming Marcus's teaching session, wasn't about food criticism or social media strategy. It was about the difference between authority that demands respect and expertise that earns it naturally. Marcus never had to announce his credentials or demand recognition. His competence spoke for itself. Together, they document how traditional techniques, when properly understood and respectfully adapted, create cuisine that honors the past while embracing the future. The Foundation's students represent diverse backgrounds and culinary traditions, but they share common ground in their commitment to excellence and their respect for the knowledge that previous generations preserved and passed down. The wooden spoon in Marcus's hand connects him to generations of knowledge, sacrifice, and quiet triumph over adversity. Grandma Essie's recipes live on not just in the dishes he creates, but in the techniques he teaches, the opportunities he provides, and the systemic changes his example has inspired throughout the industry. As evening approaches, Marcus calls his sister to share the day's successes. Another scholarship awarded, another young chef discovering their potential, another family recipe preserved and elevated for future generations. Their conversation is filled with the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful work, from using privilege and resources to create positive change that extends far beyond personal achievement. The story of Marcus Thompson resonates because it reflects struggles that extend far beyond professional kitchens into every industry, every workplace, every situation where gatekeepers use assumed authority to control access and opportunity. Marcus's triumph offers a blueprint for challenging these systems through authentic excellence, strategic thinking, and the patient accumulation of undeniable competence. Perhaps you've experienced similar moments, times when your expertise was dismissed because it didn't come from expected sources, when your contributions were overlooked because they didn't fit conventional patterns, when your potential was underestimated because of assumptions about your background, appearance, or the path that brought you to your current position. Marcus's story demonstrates that these barriers, however entrenched they seem, are not insurmountable when confronted with the right combination of skill, strategy, and persistence. The tools that Marcus used, strategic documentation, authentic excellence, professional networks built on mutual respect, and modern communication platforms, are available to anyone willing to use them thoughtfully and consistently. Social media has democratized influence, allowing quality to speak directly to audiences without requiring permission from traditional authorities who may have their own biases and limitations. But Marcus's story reveals something deeper about the nature of meaningful success and the responsibility that comes with overcoming systemic barriers. His victory wasn't just about winning an award or gaining personal recognition. It was about creating opportunities for others, preserving cultural heritage, and gradually shifting an entire industry toward greater inclusivity and authentic representation. Consider the heritage knowledge in your own family, community, or culture that deserves broader recognition and preservation. What skills, recipes, techniques, traditions, or stories have been passed down through generations but never received the acknowledgement they merit? Marcus's example shows how individual excellence can become a platform for cultural preservation, social change, and the creation of opportunities for future generations. The culinary industry's rapid transformation following Marcus's emergence demonstrates how quickly entrenched systems can change when confronted with undeniable excellence, combined with strategic communication and authentic storytelling. Isabella Rossini's fall and the broader reforms in food criticism show that gatekeepers' power depends entirely on public acceptance. When audiences demand better representation and more authentic voices, institutions must adapt or become irrelevant. Your own industry likely has similar opportunities for positive disruption and meaningful reform. Traditional hierarchies, outdated evaluation criteria, and exclusionary practices persist only as long as people accept them as inevitable or unchangeable. Marcus's strategic approach, documenting bias, building alternative networks, demonstrating excellence, and connecting directly with audiences, provides a replicable model for creating change without destructive confrontation or bitter conflict. If Marcus's story inspires you, consider how you might contribute to similar positive change in your own sphere of influence. Perhaps it's mentoring someone whose potential others have overlooked, supporting businesses and organizations that prioritize authenticity over pedigree, or simply refusing to accept "this is how things have always been done" as sufficient justification for maintaining unfair or exclusionary systems. The most powerful message in Marcus's journey isn't about revenge against those who underestimated him. It's about the transformation possible when authentic excellence meets strategic thinking, cultural preservation, and social responsibility. His grandmother's recipes became vehicles for industry reform, educational opportunity, and the creation of pathways for others to follow. Share this story if it resonates with your own experiences, aspirations, or commitment to creating positive change. Connect with others who believe that excellence transcends traditional credentials, that diversity strengthens every industry, and that meaningful success includes lifting others as you rise. The networks that supported Marcus's transformation exist in every field, waiting for people willing to build bridges across conventional boundaries and challenge systems that limit opportunity based on prejudice rather than merit. Remember, excellence doesn't require permission from self-appointed gatekeepers, and authentic competence, strategically applied and ethically motivated, can transform not just individual careers but entire industries and cultural institutions. Marcus Thompson proved that a wooden spoon and 4 generations of family recipes could challenge systems that seemed unshakable. What tools, knowledge, and authentic expertise do you possess that might create similar positive change in your own world?